Palantir has been taking off recently, so let's talk about what's going on with Palantir and why we've been seeing so much green. And first, I wanted to do just a brief overview of Palantir, what it does, and how it makes money, just to help fill in anyone who may not be familiar. So let's go ahead and hop right in. So Palantir is a data company. More specifically, Palantir is the data company. Because as far as I can tell, no one has been able to really do what they do at the level that they do it. Palantir has built itself around data that helps cut costs at businesses, helps prevent tax evasion, helps predict terror attacks, administer vaccines, help promising startups grow, and so much more. If you look at their website, the use cases, it's insane. One of the founders of Palantir is Peter Thiel, the guy who started PayPal. He was an early investor in Facebook, has the biggest Roth IRA in the world, and he knows a thing or two about a thing or two. And the concept for Palantir really started back in the PayPal days when they were losing $10 million a month in fraud. So they built some systems that combined automated, suspicious data flagging with human reviewers. And this combination was extremely successful at combating their $10 million a month problem. And then they were like, hey, we could make a business out of this. And then they did make a business out of this back in 2003. And Palantir has grown and grown and grown ever since, and has just been public for 1 year now. Now, Palantir used to be a bit of a meme stock earlier in 2021 and late 2020, but it seems to have calmed down a little bit. And now people are kind of looking at this and saying like, hey, this thing could actually be huge. It's more than just a stock that could be pumped. So what does Palantir do? It's a little bit confusing, but basically they manage data in such a way that it's searchable, readable, and can provide insights to users being companies and governments and other large organizations. The problem that they solve is organizations in 2021 have way too much data. And most of the time, that data is stored in multiple different disparate systems that don't communicate with each other. It's kind of like how I just dealt with this. I recently moved to Puerto Rico and I was getting a new driver's license, and it was such a hassle because the Puerto Rico DMV has no system to look at my driving record for Arizona. So I had to get a signed and notarized form mailed to Puerto Rico from Arizona because the systems don't communicate. It's ridiculous, but that's just how systems work sometimes. Software needs to connect these things for them to be connected. And that's just one problem that Palantir solves. Palantir is kind of like this specific tailored Google search for organizations' data. They connect dots, and then they have AI that can provide insights and say, hey, based on this data, you should potentially try out this solution. And then you try out that solution, and the results of that get inputted back in the data, and then you get even smarter and smarter insights from that data, and the system just gets better and better over time. And this, I think, is one of the biggest selling points to Palantir is their stickiness. It seems like once they get customers, once they get their fingers around these customers, the customers don't leave because they feel Palantir is so integral to their operations, and I love that as an investor. Now, they've also done a few cool things that they've been credited with, at least, including finding spyware on the Dalai Lama's computer, helping to find Osama bin Laden, and discovering Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. However, they basically say, we can't confirm or deny any of these, but basically the rumor is that they did all of those things. Either way, it's very interesting stuff. So they have three types of customers. The first and the biggest one is government agencies. They build software allowing governments and businesses to analyze their own data to help these entities make better decisions. So prior to this year, Palantir had contracts with at least 12 different government agencies, including a couple three-letter names like the CIA, the DHS, the NSA, the FBI, the CDC, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and Special Operations Command through the Army. The last one, massive. Palantir's government revenue also grew 66% year over year as of their Q2 earnings in 2021. So this is a huge section of their business, and it seems to just be growing and growing and growing. Their second type of customer is large businesses like Fortune 500 type companies. These include BP, Airbus. They have a massive partnership with Airbus through their Skywise program, 3M, and the list just keeps on growing daily on their website. There are tons of different partnerships that they seem to be getting all the time. And this is a side of the business that they have built up more recently, as they used to spend $0 on advertising and $0 on sales. It was all just kind of like word of mouth and just building existing contracts. But they've since hired more than 100 salespeople this year to land more commercial clients, and it seems to be finally paying off as they're landing more and more and more. Commercial revenue is up 28% year over year as of their Q2 earnings. Then the third type of customer Maher is really interesting. It's actually promising startups. So they're dealing with the biggest of big organizations and some of the smallest. So Palantir, they do something interesting where they help certain startups with their data needs from the ground up, and then they invest in some of these startups as well. So they actually take a position in some of these companies as kind of long shots. So they look at the team and they're like, okay, this is a promising team. This is a big idea where if they win this idea, we're looking at multiple billions of dollars in returns. And if all things align, where it's that big idea, a great team, and Palantir can help them, they seem to like to make an investment into those companies. Now, this says two things to me. First, that they're willing to take on some risk. Of course, this is high risk to invest in promising startups looking to do moonshot things like flying cars. Seriously. And some investors, because of this, they don't like that fact. They don't like that they're investing into startups. They want just sole focus on their business. It's kind of both, because they are focusing on their business because they're managing data for startups, but they are also putting some money into the startups. So some people just simply don't like it. This also tells me that the management is thinking very, very long term. They're taking bets that might not pan out for 20 years. I mean, they've been around for about 20 years now, and they spent 3 years before they even had a product come out. They seem to really take their time and think extremely long term. And to be honest, it's worked pretty well so far because they have this very large competitive moat around their product that no one seems to be able to pierce quite yet. There's no companies, like I mentioned earlier, that seem to be doing what they do at the same level. So now that we know who they are and what they do and how they make money, let's get into the news. So Palantir has been doing particularly well over the last month or so. Personally, I'm now up more than 30% on my position, so I am not complaining whatsoever. But if you search Palantir news, there hasn't been a whole lot happening. It's like quiet, almost too quiet. The last big news really was like their Q2 earnings, and that exceeded expectations, but the stock didn't move a whole lot right afterwards. The only exception being Palantir has entered what they call a strategic partnership with Wejo, which just means that they are both investors in that company and they plan to help the company grow with their services like we mentioned earlier. So Wejo is a company out of the UK that deals in vehicle data. They have more than 11 million vehicles that they track to, quote, reduce emissions, improve vehicle safety, and design resilient smart cities. And they say that all the data they receive are from people who have opted in and are totally aware of the data that they're providing, because I was concerned about that. Basically, they collect vehicle data and then they sell that data to cities in order to build better infrastructure, sell it to logistics companies, sell it to car manufacturers, and use it in mapping. Data is worth a whole lot. Palantir will help manage this data. And of course, that is a perfect use case for data because they deal in big data. What's interesting here is this kind of makes Palantir an indirect competitor with Tesla in smart vehicle data. And because of that, this is probably my favorite strategic partnership of Palantir's to date. It just makes so much sense given Palantir's offering and the hype around smart vehicles and vehicle data right now and just Tesla in general. So here's what Palantir's COO had to say about what it means for investors.
So how valuable is this for Palantir?
We think this is very valuable because it's indicative of a broader opportunity, a fantastic opportunity to invest in highly ambitious companies and to help these companies, whether they're building flying cars like Lilium or they're transforming pharma like Roivant or they're transforming the automotive ecosystem like Wejo. We're helping them shave years and potentially hundreds of millions of dollars off of their R&D roadmaps, helping them execute the central ambition of their business much more quickly.
So it appears this could be the pop that Palantir needs, and this puts us right back on track to my March 2022 price target of $32 per share, which seems totally doable at this point in time. Now, I do want to give my disclaimer here because I always want to paint the entire picture of any company or investment that I'm talking about. Palantir is a relatively expensive company as is. They currently have a price to sales ratio of around 40. So at this level, there's a lot of growth priced in. Management forecasts a year-over-year growth of around 30% for the next 5 years, which is of course quite large for a billion-dollar company, but it actually seems like more of a conservative estimate if we look at their previous quarters and the level of growth that they've been able to sustain. But what this means is baked into the current share price is the fact that if they aren't able to hit that 30% year-over-year growth, the share price will be hit hard. So we really are banking on the management and the team to grow this thing at an exponential level. So we're not at rock bottom prices. This is not financial advice, but I would just watch the price and see where it hangs out over the next few days and few weeks if you are interested in this very exciting company. For me personally, I plan on holding this thing for the long haul. So the day-to-day price movements don't matter a whole lot to me, but I sure do like when my price targets are hit. So that's going to do it for today. I would like to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.